When I was 14 years old, I was a dumb kid and I made a lot of dumb decisions and ended up in a lot of embarrassing situations. And this one is the worst of all of them. This is probably my number two story. In all the stories that I have to share that have happened in my life, this one's number two. And that's because I've never heard anybody share an experience that was more embarrassing than what happened to me. I've heard some that come close. I've just never actually met somebody that's done something this stupid, but you'll see. So I was 14 and I was on a camping trip with a bunch of buddies of mine, but more specifically with my neighbor, Kirk. And we were good friends and had a really good time. We were in Jackson Hole. We were on a rafting trip. And I don't know if you know this about 14-year-old boys, but they play stupid games. And we had this thing that we called starting a new ball game. And what that meant was that if you were to, say, punch your buddy in the shoulder, and then he hit you back, you weren't allowed to hit him again because he was just getting payback, right? That brought the scales to even. That was justice, right? But if you hit him, he hits you back, and then I hit him again, well, that's starting a whole new ball game where they now have the right to hit me again because I started something. So this is all about who started a tit for tat, right? Well, I can't even remember what he did, but I think Kirk, that day, we were rafting, camping, and I think he gave me a wedgie at some point. And so I was just on the lookout. I was like, oh, you just started a whole new ball game. I'm coming at you. But I knew that revenge is a platter best served cold. And so I was looking for an opportunity where he'd least expect me to get back at him. Now, on this rafting trip, they had scheduled a day of fun in Jackson Hole where we'd go into the city and we went to the Aquatic Center, which is, a huge swimming pool with slides and lots of fun stuff to do. And so I'm just watching like a hawk all day long. We're playing, we're swimming, and I'm like, I could shove Kirk into the water at one point, right? He's standing on the edge, but I'm like, well, he's already in a swimsuit. It's really not that big of a deal. Or we walked up and we were about to go down a slide, and I was like, I could throw him down the slide. But again, he was going to go down the slide anyway. And I was like, maybe I just give him a wedgie, and right? Bring it back to even so that there's justice. But none of it seemed quite right. So I just held off. And I was just waiting for that perfect opportunity where I could come and just pay him back in a way that he would know that I didn't forget about the wedgie he had given me. I was coming back. So the day passes, we get done swimming, it's time to go. We all head to the locker room. And as you know, all good things happen in a locker room. So we're waiting there. We're changing, and this is still on my mind. My time is running out to do something back to Kirk. And I'm at my locker right here, and he's next to me changing, right? And I can kind of see him out of the corner of my eye, and I'm changing, and I get done dressing, and I put my clothes on, and I turn, and my moment presented itself like never before. And I had to act quick. I was like, this is my last chance. I got to jump on this. What had happened was I had done dressing first. And so I turned to Kirk, and he is there next to me at his locker, but he's bending over, and he's totally naked. He's bending down to grab something off the ground as he's changing. And I'm like, oh, son, you done it. Here is the chance. Now I get my payback. So I wound up, and I went, and I slapped him on the butt just as hard as I could. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is my payback. So I slap him, and then a 26-year-old man that I've never met jumps up and goes, "What are you doing?" I just slapped a complete stranger on the bare butt in the locker room.
You serious?
Someone I had never met before, never seen before. And my face goes bright red, as it should. Like I have never felt so sickeningly embarrassed in my life. And I just stood there. I didn't know what to say. Everybody in the locker room, there's probably 10 other in my scout troop, all standing in the locker room, and they all turn around and they're like, what's going on? And some of them are like, oh my gosh, did Carson just hit that guy on the butt while he's naked? And I did the only thing I could think of. And I said, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my friend. And of course, this doesn't exactly clear things up. And he's like, he could tell that I was absolutely mortified from this. And he just kind of like goes back to changing, never in the room. There's a few scattered chuckles. People are trying to muffle it. They can't believe what I've done. And I stand there, and in hindsight, I should have ran, right? Like fight or flight, I just froze up. And in hindsight, I'm like, I totally should have just booked it. I should have just ran out of there. But instead, I just stood there and I took it. Oh man. Well, a few seconds later, really, like almost as if on cue, Kirk walks into the locker room and he's fully dressed. How I could be so dumb to not realize that Kirk had left the room and that this wasn't even him, like we were 14-year-olds. Like, how did I confuse this 26-year-old guy? I don't know. Like I said, it was really dumb. But Kirk walks in, and then everybody starts to laugh because the other members of my scout troop all know that he is the one that I thought this naked dude was. And anyway, they all start laughing, and he's like, "What? What happened?" Like, he has no idea, but the more he says, the more everybody starts laughing because they're not in on it. Or he's not in on it. He has no idea what he's just stumbled into. Anyway, the 26-year-old man, he kind of played it off, and he's like, "Oh, your friend likes that, huh?" Kind of joking with me, trying to take the edge off, which was really, really cool of him. But man, for days, if you've ever had that embarrassed feeling, for days, I felt this pit in the bottom of my stomach, like, oh my gosh, I am never going to live this down. And sure enough, the other boys in my scout troop, I'm sure they all remember this. I've told this story on a number of occasions, and people just can't believe that I slapped another man's butt in the locker room.